Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound. Joined today by Devin Pennypacker, media manager at Worn and Wound. Devin, how's it going?
It is going very well, Zach. I'm doing very well, Zach. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. You know, it's Monday as we record. Just kind of, grinding away through the typical Monday stuff. That's which includes podcasting today. So
big Monday energy today for sure.
Yeah. We have a fun show today. We are going to talk about how to start a watch collection in 2025 in this current environment of watch collecting and watch enthusiasm. I think it's a unique time in watch collecting. And this is a question that I know I get fairly often. In fact, just last week I was asked by, a normie, let's call him a normie.
A plebe.
Someone who's not yet, in deep into the watch community, just asked me about, first watches to buy, how to start how to think about these things. So, from time to time we get these questions, and I think the answer changes depending on the season, in watch terms. It's starting a collection in 2020, was a very different, thing than starting a collection now.
Well, it's very different from January to April to July, depending on what percentage you want to look at.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in season in sort of the grander sense, but if you want to do how to start a collection with a summer watch, then, by all means.
Sure. I mean, if you look at the news right now, unfortunately, Swiss watches are in the news pretty heavily. And I think that has started a lot of discussions where people want to know where to start because it is scarier to start now more than ever. And so I think that this topic is actually very important, more than it probably was a few years ago.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. We'll talk a little bit about some recent new releases that have generated a lot of conversation amongst ourselves and within the watch community. But before we do that, let's do a quick wrist check. Devin, what are you wearing today?
Oh, all right. I have a fun one. I put on the bright yellow translucent Swatch Scuba Aqua.
There you go. Speaking of summer watches, that's kind of the quintessential summer watch. How are you liking it?
Yeah, I still really like this watch. It's the first time I've had it back on the wrist because it was taken away from me by my partner, and actually don't know how I got it back. I think I took it back under the guise that I was going to make content about it and then just didn't. But in full transparency, I was up hiking in the Catskills yesterday and I had the Brew Worn and Wound Lumint limited edition with me. I had it out, took some photos of it with the mountain backdrop. It was really beautiful. And I realized in wearing it that it's a full steel watch, full steel bracelet, a little bit tight on my wrist. It was very hot, so it was swelling. And I took it off when I got back to the car just to give my wrist a break. And I left it in the car. So when I got back into my apartment here, I just needed something to throw on. And this was sitting out on the counter. So I just put it on really quickly and have been wearing it ever since.
I love a, kind of grab and go watch. A watch that is just kind of there for you on the counter or in your watch box or wherever. And it's good to go. I think that's a fun swatch.
It's super fun. It's enormous. It's really lightweight. It's obviously quartz, so it's already set. I didn't have to worry about it. Just super goofy, too. It's just a laugh of a watch. And the crown is at 10 for no reason. So it's fun. And bioceramic, which we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, no, Swatch is going to come up momentarily. I think we'll be talking about Swatch. Before we do that, my wrist check, I'm wearing my Nomos Metro Ace Jewelers collection that I picked up a little earlier in the summer. Really love this watch. I think I'm going to bring this watch to Geneva Watch Days at the beginning of September. I think this might be the watch I usually don't bring more than one or two watches when I travel internationally. So, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of them, if not the only one.
Interesting. You're going to sneak a German into Switzerland and just show it off a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Very cool.
I think that's the plan.
Good pick.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I like this watch a lot. Okay, so let's talk about the bioceramic elephant in the room. We'll just cover, a handful of new releases that were somewhat known. This is, of course, a slow time in the watch industry. The summer doldrums are well upon us. All of Switzerland is on vacation.
Oh, yeah.
This month. So there really is not a lot happening in terms of new watch releases. So something like the new MoonSwatch that Swatch and Omega released, well, I guess it was made available for sale just a few days ago, just over the weekend. That lands like a ton of bricks and gets everyone talking.
Yeah.
So this is a new Earth. I think it's the second Earth phase watch that they've made. It has Snoopy on it. It also has Moonshine Gold accents and sort of like faux aventurine accents.
Yeah.
It's got a dark blue bioceramic case. It's basically everything that they do in MoonSwatches, and also some notable like Omega releases thrown up against the wall and combined together. What are your thoughts on the latest MoonSwatch?
It is, well, there's a few problems with it. Number one, it's like $110 more expensive than all the other ones for no reason at all.
Moonshine Gold, buddy. Got that Moonshine Gold.
But I mean, kind of not really. Also, not really. I cannot say the name. It's Mission to Earth Phase Moonshine Gold. Yeah. And I cannot say that at my normal cadence, which, as you all know, is very quick. I can't say it in one sentence. So I have to like slow myself down. I don't like that. So for that reason, I'm out. And it's also just like, yeah, there's a lot going on, which is kind of annoying. I also really hate the fact that they did one really cool thing and they put the hidden I beat everyone on the dial in UV, which is really cool. But then they put it on the back in non-UV, which is really stupid. Do one or the other. Don't do both.
Is it really cool?
Yes,
that they did it in absolutely. UV on the front.
Yeah, that is my favorite thing about the summer blue deep sea. That is the coolest little detail that they've ever done on an Omega.
I think it's deeply lame. I think it's going to age like tuna that's been left out on a counter for weeks on
sturgeon.
End.
Come on, sturgeon.
Yeah, sturgeon. Yeah,
it was right there.
Yeah, it's going to age like sturgeon. I don't know. Who's going to look back on this watch in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years and think, oh my God, I'm so glad that hidden UV signature is there. That's so cool. This is
nobody, because it'll be dead.
But I mean, but even on the Omega, on the deep sea, like it's just, it's like the definition of something that like will not age well. It's something that's like of the moment. And
sure. I guess so. But like the deep sea has enough going on though, as far as like texture and depth and romance, that you get lost in the other details. And then all of a sudden this like weird little sci-fi pop of fun comes out at you that doesn't feel like it should be there. And that's why it works. On this, it feels a little bit gimmicky. And then you put the text on the back and it's like, oh, you ruined the gimmick. So it's just, I don't know. It's weird. It's like two people came up with the idea and they were both allowed to pursue it and they didn't know about each other's idea. And then they saw it afterwards and went, oh, crap.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
I think, yeah. Were you there? Were you in the Swatch boardroom? And I think that's exactly how it transpired. Yeah, I think this watch is a mess. I made like a very snarky Instagram reel about how I kind of thought
I loved that. Yeah, it was fun.
Watch was a mess. Just had a lot going on. I'm long past the point of saturation when it comes to MoonSwatches. I'm just very, very over it. And for a while, I thought I was kind of like on an island there and everyone else was sort of like still enjoying it and having fun. No. And this is the release that I feel like everyone else is sort of like caught up with me.
Everyone else fell off the cliff.
Yeah. I feel like I mean, obviously there's a handful, not maybe more than a handful. There's probably plenty of people who love this, but I saw a lot of conversation on social media and elsewhere about how this is just like, it's just too much. Is that kind of like your impression as well, that like people are not reacting to this super positively?
Yeah, I think that's the collective groan when this came out, like the whole watch media. And I think collector group in general just kind of groaned. Personally, I saw it and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. And I moved on. I'm just over it to the point where like it doesn't offend me like it offended everyone else. I think the strap is actually kind of cool. I like the strap personally. But I don't know. It didn't offend me. I thought it was all right. It's a nice color blue and the gold accents are fun. It just, I don't know. I see it. I think, okay, that's interesting. It's kind of fun. It's a neat story for a week. And then next week we forget about it and we move on to cooler things, which, I mean, we have other watches that came out last week that are cooler that we can talk about. I don't think that they knocked it out of the park.
What's one that came out last week that's cooler?
Okay, I want to talk about one that we didn't write about, which is kind of a faux pas on our part. But I think that the new Timex dime piece Intrepid is kind of awesome. And I think...
Sell me on this watch.
Okay, so dime piece, Bryn Wallner found the Intrepid it was in an old photo of JFK. She'd found the old photo, talked to Timex, they revitalized that piece, 46 millimeters, it's huge, but they brought it back from the archive. This year, they actually shrunk it down to 36 millimeters. They changed some of the details, cream dial, blue accents, co-branded case back, made it more wearable for people like Bryn. And I think that that's a really cool thing. It's still like $230 or $240. It's still approachable, but it still has the classic styling. And I think that's really fun. I thought the marketing campaign was a little bit cringy, but it's very much the dime piece vibe, obviously.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's a really cool archival revival that a couple people talked about, but a lot of people didn't. It was more in like the hype beast sector of the watch industry and not so much the traditional landscape of watch media. And I wished more people would have talked about it.
Yeah, I think it's a cool watch. I'm all for Timex kind of like rating the archives. I think the JFK Jr. connection is like, I mean, it's not something that is like super interesting to me personally, but obviously he was, a very well-known figure who's passed away. Like there's an intrinsic kind of like, there's always going to be interest in that, anything that you can like tie to celebrity, his life is a kind of an interesting story. So I think that's, it's ultimately I think it's like a cool looking sort of like retro inspired watch.
It's fun. It's a quirky release that is forgotten about. It's kind of weird too. Like it's a mid-90s release that has already been lost and then brought back. So it's kind of weird that it happened so quickly.
Well, it's 30 years ago, that's a lot.
Oh God.
Yeah. Mid-90s is, listen, man, you got to accept it. Yeah. I've accepted it. Like that's vintage now. So
yeah, I am vintage.
Yeah. we're what was it I read the other day? Like we're further away from like Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit video now than Nirvana was from the Beatles on Ed Sullivan when that like someone fact check me on that, but like,
oh my God,
that's a crazy stat. So,
whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, we're all old. We're just hurtling through space on this giant rock.
Everyone can collectively sigh, feel all their joints ache a little bit deeper in that one moment right there.
Real quick, in terms of new releases, the one other new release I wanted to chat with you about was the Seiko Pepsi. They did it. They put Pepsi on the dial. They made a licensing deal
finally
with Pepsi bezel, Pepsi on the dial. Who would have thought?
And the case back.
And the packaging looks like a Pepsi can.
Yeah.
Any initial thoughts on this? It's amazing that we got this in the MoonSwatch back to back. I think just absolutely crazy stuff.
Sure, yeah, it's cool. I'm ready for the Fridge Siggy edition. I got my $500 set aside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. I don't really like co-branded products like this. I don't want Delta or whatever stamped on my watch. I don't want another logo on there. I don't want a Domino's Rolex.
Yeah, it just seems like I don't know, like who loves corporations enough to go out there and get the Pepsi watch,
the thing
or the Delta watch or whatever,
It scares me because I look at this and that we've seen this with other things out there, and I'm looking at you military style nylon straps. I really hope that this isn't an excuse for Seiko to start suing everyone who calls their bezel a Pepsi bezel. And all of a sudden it's just a mess.
I don't think that's it. I don't know that listen, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe, hey, listen, if there's a lawyer listening, there must be one or two of you.
Oh, and they're just, they hate us.
Is that something that that Pepsi could do? Is that something they'd even want to do? I feel like they're a rich enough corporation. They wouldn't have to go after every little blog that used the term Pepsi bezel.
That's true. They would have done it by now if they really wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, that would. I can't see that happening, but hey, if it does,
weirder things have happened.
Yeah. Okay, shall we break into the topic of the day? How to start a watch collection?
Let's do it.
So I think I think first of all, it's worth kind of like looking at the current sort of moment in watch collecting, and we alluded to this. We're earlier 2025. We've got the tariffs, which are now in effect 39% tariff on Swiss watches, which doesn't mean, of course, you're going to be paying 39% more. Tariffs are complicated, but you will be paying more for a Swiss watch. Ultimately, with these tariffs,
in some cases, maybe more than 39%, depending on how they're being passed along.
Well, I mean, I think if it's more than 39%, that would mean the brand is just increasing their margin to a point that, because the 39% is on the wholesale
Yes.
price.
Yeah.
So, and it's only on the parts of Swiss origin. So
correct.
You know, if it were more than 39%, then a brand is just like trying to get theirs, and there's other things going on. That wouldn't be a tariff only.
No. But there have been, I think there are two brands in particular, which I don't necessarily want to call out just in case I get the name wrong, but they have increased their prices by like 45%. Now, granted, their prices are on the lower side, but they're roughly around 45% just because they are bracing for a potential secondary increase.
Yeah. Well, listen, brands are going to do what they're going to do to try to like get theirs, I guess. But
yeah, for sure.
Good luck to you if you think that increasing your prices by that dramatic value is going to be accepted by consumers. But I guess like the way I wanted to open up this conversation is like, what's unique about collecting watches in 2025 versus like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever you got into the hobby? What do people kind of need to like first sort of like think about when starting a collection at this particular moment?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, we've talked about this so many times, but now there's more education than there ever has been. There's more accessibility than there ever has been in terms of watch fairs and boutiques and collector groups and just, I don't know, people in general, communities that we can talk to. But there's also more nefarious people than there have been ever before. People who are looking to scam you or lead you astray or, I don't know, just misrepresent the community or misrepresent watches in general. So yeah, it can be really easy to kind of fall into the wrong side of the watch industry or to get burned right out of the gate. So you have to be a little bit more careful, but as long as you are, this can be a much easier hobby to get into than it used to be. You know, you're not digging through back channels like you used to. You're not trying to find weird books that aren't even at your library. You're not trying to, find that one weird watchmaker who might be at your jeweler, might not be at your jeweler, who doesn't really want to talk to you, but maybe he does want to talk to you, or tries to tell you that he can't change the battery on your watch because his parts only service Rolexes, which is a true story. I had that happen one time. It's different now than it used to be, which is nice.
Yeah. I think, like to me, what it boils down to is like right now, watches are like, they're kind of like mainstream in a way that they weren't.
Oh, big time.
Like watches were always sort of like a niche hobby. And I think for a variety of reasons, the MoonSwatch honestly is among them, and also the proliferation of watches on social media, and YouTube and elsewhere. Like it's not as much. It's more of a mainstream like pursuit now, similar to like sneaker collecting or something. Like people are like people like understand it as a hobby, as like as a thing that you're interested in a way that like they didn't before. Like it's not a strange thing to say at like a social gathering that you're like, that you're really into watches. When I started, it was almost sort of like, do you even want to like say that around certain groups of people? Like it's kind of like it was almost something that not that you were like embarrassed by, but like required like an explanation as to why. And I feel like that it doesn't require that anymore. Like people understand that there are watch collectors, watch enthusiasts. Watches are like a category of good, and it's just like that to me is like the big difference between like the current moment and even like 6 or 7 years ago, probably is when I think that really started to change.
I mean, more than anything, we're also allowed to be nerds now. If you look, so I mean, if we just boil this down to what it is, the watch market is still predominantly a male-driven market, unfortunately. It just is. If you look at the metrics, we have more men in the industry. We try to be more inclusive. We try to have more women on the platform. And I think that our female audience is growing, and that's awesome. It's becoming more inclusive, and that's really cool. But it is still skewed. And if you look back 10 years ago, to have a man who said that he was interested in fashion or jewelry or even video games, that was seen as kind of abnormal. Whereas now, like nerd culture or fashion or sneaker collecting and stuff like that, that's seen as more mainstream. Mm-hmm. The niche hobbies are seen as more acceptable, especially for males. And I think that that's a really cool thing and a really important thing. So we're able to, I guess, better embrace our niche hobbies, better embrace more, nerd-centric hobbies. And watch collecting is definitely one of those things. So I think just having a more accepting culture has definitely helped with that too, and helped people, I don't know, just express themselves and get into things or try new things that they otherwise would have shied away from because it wasn't the normal thing.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, what? I completely agree. I think that like we're all just sort of like more accepting of like the weird things we're all into.
Yeah.
I'm wondering like what changed and why that is. Like, to me, I kind of trace it back to like COVID, when everyone was sort of like stuck inside and like looking for things to do and like pursuing, like sourdough bread baking and like, listening to like more and more podcasts about like arcane topics. And I think like maybe that experience made people comfortable with like pursuing things that are of interest to them and like being open about it and like, having this like, putting their like intellectual curiosity like on display.
Yeah, I think more than anything, that was like the age of discovery. I think it started before that because how many times did you hear people talk about podcasts before COVID? Like for me, it was a lot. I had a lot of people who were trying to shove podcasts down my throat because I would do a lot of road trips. I would listen to music and maybe audiobooks, and everyone was like, how do you not listen to podcasts? And it just wasn't for me at the time. So like they were
When
around.
did you start? What was your first like podcast experience? Like when did you start listening to?
That's honestly, it didn't happen for a very long time. Frankly, actually, the Grey NATO might have been one of the early ones. Yeah, I'm not for a long time, I was not a big podcast person. For the same reason, I'm not a big audio book person. I am really crazy when it comes to audio. So when I'm watching videos and stuff like that, if the audio is off slightly, and Zach, you can attest to this, as I just gave you notes on my audio before this podcast started. I freak out about audio for video and podcast recordings. So if the audio is off even slightly at the beginning of a podcast or an audiobook, I will not listen to the whole thing, no matter what the topic is, no matter who the hosts are.
Wow.
And so I think a lot of recording technology pre-COVID was really terrible. And that's when people got better at it. And luckily, that's also when I had nothing better to do, and I was able to kind of just dive into other topics. But like a lot of other people out there, I think that's when we had nothing to do but dive into media and topics that we hadn't explored before because we consumed everything in our bubble. And so in that moment, it was like, okay, I'm going to try making bread. I'm going to try cocktails. I'm going to try watches. I'm going to try watching movies that I otherwise wouldn't have watched because they are just there. Why not try it? And that's when everyone realized, oh, I'm into things that I didn't realize I was into. And it's okay that you're into things you didn't realize you were into too. And that's when acceptance started to kind of creep in for a lot of us. Now, for most people, it probably happened before or after, but I think for a lot of people around me, that's when it started to happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's, that like that pandemic period was like fertile ground for like discovering all kinds of new things, like Tiger King.
God. I actually never watched Tiger King. I'm still saved from that to this day, thankfully.
You still can. It's still up there.
I'm good.
You can
I'm
watch
actually good.
you want.
No, I'm fine.
I think that people will sometimes like, frame the idea of like getting into watches as like starting a collection rather than just, and that's how we're framing this podcast. It's like, how to start a collection. But like, there's also just the idea of like getting a watch, getting your first like quote unquote real watch, and then kind of like seeing where things go. So I guess one question I wanted to ask you is like, how do you define a collection, and what's the importance or lack of importance on like the intentionality of like starting to collect? Like, can you even do that? Like, can you start to collect like, with intention from nothing, or like, does it take time to like develop an interest?
I hope you don't. I think the people who start collecting with the intention to collect are the people who flame out of the hobby and ultimately kind of ruin it for other people. I think those are the people who ultimately try to twist it into something that it's not. They go into it with some sort of intention to turn it into a money-making experience or whatever the case may be. They want to twist it into what they see the collecting experience being rather than letting it happen organically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe they don't ruin it for everybody, but they might ruin it for people who they're interacting with, or at least taint it in some way, shape, or form. And I think if you've been to, meetups or different events, I think we've all met people like that, where you interact with them a couple times and you're like, you are on a quest to do something with your collection. I don't know what it is. I want no part of that quest. You leave me out of it.
And also, like, you will not be here in 6 months. Like,
exactly. Yeah, you'll be gone. You'll be on to the next thing. You'll be collecting sneakers. You'll be collecting rings, or what? I don't know what the thing is going to be. Microchips. You'll be hoarding GPUs at this point next year.
Yeah. Might be a better investment than
for sure. And Nvidia is doing very well.
Yeah. I think it's like, so first of all, it's like, it's very kind of like individualized. Like, everyone's a little bit different, and everyone has a, different like approach to, like, pursuing a hobby. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with like saying, like, I'm interested in watches, I want to pursue this as a hobby and like see where it goes, as long as you understand that like maybe it's not for you, and like don't be a dick if you
might hate it.
You might hate it. Like, you might it might not be for you. They might be, you might not like wearing a watch. You might find them to be too expensive or too finicky. There's any number of reasons why you wouldn't like become like a long-term, like lifelong collector. But I think like a better, like, the question I would rather get from someone, as opposed to like, how do I start a collection? The question I'd rather get is like, I'm interested in watches. What's a good watch that I can get to like, help pursue that interest? Like, what would you recommend? And like, when I hear that question, or a question like it, I'm always thinking about like, what watch can I recommend that's going to make them, it's going to be like a good watch that they'll like, and B, it'll be a watch that hopefully kind of like inspires them to pursue the hobby in some way, whether that means like adding more watches, or just like, reading about watches, or talking about watches, or like going to watch meetups. You want to kind of like, you want to inspire in some way.
Well, and I want someone's first watch to foster the interest too. So I want it to be something that when they show up to the meetup, other people look at it and they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is interesting. Clearly you have some sort of budding interest, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's something that, like us, you look in your watch box and maybe you don't wear it anymore, but you still look down on that watch and you're like, you know what, that is a cool piece. I'm glad I have that. I'm going to throw it on today. Because I remember when I used to wear that watch every single day. I get really disappointed when people buy their first watch, or their first nice watch, quote unquote, and then they sell it, or they move on from it, or they throw it in a drawer and they never touch it again, because they just really don't care about it. It was just kind of like the thing that got them in, and it really wasn't the right thing. Or they bought the Tissot PRX because that is what YouTube told them to buy.
Right.
Or, whatever the case may be. Like, buy something that interests you, not what the mass market is telling you to buy.
Yeah. Is there a watch like that for you that's in your watch box that kind of like reminds you of the early days of collecting, or did you sell that first watch?
No. I haven't sold a lot of my watches, believe it or not. I took the dragon approach, and I sit on a mass of watches constantly. I collect them, and I don't really get rid of most of them, which is horrible. Like, we had a podcast a couple months ago where I talked about how I was going to do a purge. Yeah. And I think I sold like 4 watches and then just gave up and moved on. Because,
you listed like 50 watches.
Yeah, I just hate dealing with people and selling watches. And like, I actually stopped responding to some people, because it was one of those things where, you know how it goes. You get 40 messages of still available. Can I have pictures? And you send pictures, you don't hear back from them. And then a week later, you hear back from them, and then they lowball you. And you're just like, you know what? I gave you a good price. I sent you photos. I'll work with you if I want to work with you. But you just get tired. And you're like, sure, whatever, I'll move on. And then I also, right after that, I bought a new watch that I thought I was really going to like, and then I didn't like it. I sold it a week later, and I was just tired. All right, I'm going to move on. But no, the watch that I still go back to from time to time, I was actually wearing it. I think, do I have it on my desk here? I think I do. I do. Heck yeah. My Seiko SKX. I still pull this out and I wear it a lot. This is actually one of the like first nice watches. This is when I started getting intentional about collecting watches. So this isn't when I first got into watches. I had been into watches before this for quite some time, actually. I'm one of those weird people who, like, as a child would wear a wristwatch. I had like a New England Patriots quartz wristwatch that I really liked. I got off of eBay for like $25.
Wait. You, Mr. Cleveland, with a New England Patriots watch?
All right, so hear me out. Mike Vrabel, one of my favorite players of all time.
Okay, sure, yeah.
His father was my high school principal. And so like he was a middle linebacker for the New England Patriots outside linebacker, but he also played tight end. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Every single catch he had was for a touchdown, which is a really cool stat to have too. So personal hero of mine. I liked playing offense and defense when I played football when I was younger. So like personal hero. Big Patriots fan.
Was this a watch with the old logo or the new style look?
So I actually had both, though I had one with Mr. Patriot and then one with like the new style head. But the first one was with the new style head. And I would wear that like as a child. And then I had one that like you would pull a little tab and like a thing flips up because it would like protect the watch head. I still have that somewhere too. My uncle bought that for me at one point, and that's floating around here somewhere too. Terrible little watch. It had like an Alongapo bracelet too, so it's like sized for a child, and I can't wear it anymore, but I have it. But the SKX that I have here, this is the watch that like when I really got intentional and serious about watch collecting, I bought this watch, wore it for a while, beat the snot out of it, eventually modded it, swapped out the crystal, swapped out the bezel insert, swapped out the chapter ring, and still to this day, like I'll pull it out every once in a while and throw it on, and I'm so happy that this is the watch that I decided like, okay, cool, I'm going to pull the trigger and get it. And I'm happy that I modded it too, because if I didn't, I think I would be looking at it as a commodity, as these are now trading way above what they're worth.
Yeah.
But because I modded it, this is my SKX. This is my watch. And I'm really glad that I have this in my watch box. And I hope that this story is the exact same story that organic collectors also have. Yeah.
My answer to that question about the first or like the watch that's like still in your watch box that like connects you to that period is also a Seiko. It's a Seiko Orange Monster.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's not the Orange Monster that I originally owned. I've owned several, over the years. But that was like the watch that kind of like pulled me into like the enthusiast sort of world and like kind of like got me like, into the forums and, it really kind of, I don't know, just like kind of like expanded my, like my view of the watch world in a meaningful way. And I did sell or trade the first Orange Monster that I owned because I didn't realize it was that watch like at that moment, like that's another thing is like, how do you know that it's,
right. You just have no clue in the moment.
Only know in retrospect, but
yeah.
I went a long period kind of like without owning an Orange Monster or having any monster because I've owned like the blue one and the black one and other, variants, over the years. And I kind of thought to myself, like, I'd like to like pick up like a, like a Gen 1 or Gen 2 Orange Monster, and a buddy of mine on one of the, like kind of like Boston area group chats had one for sale. He was the original owner. So I snapped it up and like, it feels just like kind of wearing that first Monster. Yeah. And it really, even though it wasn't a watch that I owned, from the beginning, it really does kind of like pull me right back into that kind of like those are like early stages. And, I'll never get rid of that watch. It's like, it's not worth a whole lot. And it's,
right.
It doesn't really keep very good time. Maybe it'll stop working altogether someday. But like, just like seeing it in the watch box sort of like it's kind of like its own pleasure. And I do pull it out and wear it like, from time to time. But yeah, that's like the kind of like the power of like a single watch to sort of like start you down a path,
Yeah. And it's very important to, like I said, to pick the right one that connects you to it. Because I mean, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you were to start with a watch right now, like you probably would not pick an Orange Seiko Monster. To me, that doesn't scream Zekazan.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. But I still think it's like it's a good kind of like overall pick. It's like it's definitely like it's a hobbyist watch. It's an enthusiast watch for sure. But it's also like super practical and affordable. It kind of like checks all those boxes. And we'll get to like brands and watches to consider, for that like first watch or like to start a collection.
Yeah. Well, because it's harder. It's harder now than it was then.
There's a lot of choices. There's a lot more choices now than there have been at like kind of any previous point, at least since I've been involved in the hobby. So yeah, there's a lot more to consider. But we have some tools to kind of like, figure out what it is, that you should get and how to approach the hobby. I think one of the big things that you kind of have to figure out is like how to do the research, like how to like, like what to search for, like what threads to read on the forums, who to follow on Instagram. What's your sort of like approach to that?
For me, I mean, I always try to look for people who I find very similar viewpoints outside of watches. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also why the Grey NATO was something that appealed to me personally early on, is because they were early on in podcasting, not early on in watches, but they were definitely early on in like watch influencer people for me, just because they liked cars and adventure and outdoors. And that was all the stuff that I was into. And as soon as I heard Jason Heaton talking about working in an REI, and like I worked in an REI and I ran an outdoor store. I was sitting here like, oh, these are people who I know these people. I've spent time with these people. I am, partially these people. And so I started realizing like, oh, maybe some of the things that they like are some of the things that I like. And I started kind of exploring sectors that they were into. And I kind of realized, maybe not. Maybe we don't have the same tastes all the way through, but we have similarities. But I definitely look for the peripherals, because I think at the end of the day, you're going to have intersecting hobbies, or at least interests that kind of tie you together. And that's really going to be more important. You're not going to have the same watch tastes with everybody out there. And I think even people who know who I am, I think a lot of people pigeonhole me as like the large tool watch guy. But I also am a huge fan of like the JLC Reverso is something that I ogle, and the Cartier Santos is something I ogle all the time. I also like really small, elegant dress watches. People don't realize that. So you're not going to always fit in one small box. Look for the outside hobbies that you connect with in an influencer. And if you can resonate with the person outside of watches, then maybe start to listen to their opinion on watches too.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think it boils down to just like finding the right community, like a community that sort of like makes sense for you to be a part. Because like we talk about like the watch community, like in like capital letters, like, which is like a big community, but there's like little sub communities like in the watch community. There's like the TGN, type of community. There's, like just before we jumped on, I saw the latest like Mr. Enthusiast reel, and he's got some new sort of like, little teeny, like, geezer watch as he calls them. And that's like an whole other, like subset of with a whole community around it. And like, we could go on and on. So it's just about, I think, like finding something that resonates with you. The problem or the challenge, I should say, is that there's no like shortcut to that. You just sort of have to like, in today's sort of like, algorithmic social media age, just have to sort of like happen upon something and then you do and then pursue it. And that's a big difference between, kind of like starting, as a collector or as an enthusiast now versus 10 years ago. You sort of like, it's sort of like the reverse. You were like, I'm into Pilot's watches, and you find the Pilot's watch forum, and you learn about IWC, and you learn about, Stova, and you learn about, all these other things. Now it's like, you're scrolling and something is served to you. Yeah. And it's a very different dynamic.
It is interesting you mentioned that too, because I think we talk about how there's this plethora of community and knowledge and influencers and media out there, but you're right. It is also harder to find where you belong because of that. I mean, just the other day, I was talking to you about a podcast that in all rights is a pretty successful podcast that has been running for quite some time that I have never heard of before. And I think they're on episode like 300.
Yeah.
I sent you a message. I'm like, I've never heard of these people before, but they just talked about you on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try to stay on top of as much watch media as possible because I like to know what everyone else is doing, and I like to know who else is in the community with us. So hopefully I can, meet them at meetups and we can reach out and maybe collaborate. And these are people who, are doing similar things to what we're doing, and I had never heard of them before. So it just goes to show you that even though this is a small niche hobby, it is still just swamped with things.
Yeah, there's plenty of room for blind spots. It's kind of like, and I think that like one of the things that we should all sort of, have the right perspective on is like what to do with those blind spots. And I think that like for me, the answer is always to like check them out and to like make them like, they shouldn't be blind spots, after a certain point. It's like I'm very jealous, of the person who like has yet to watch The Sopranos, like if that's your blind spot, like you have an opportunity to like, enjoy something like fantastic for the first time. But
what if they hate it?
But you still have that opportunity to like to pursue it. And now with all the context like around it of all the commentary about the finale and so much has been written about it. And it's the same thing with with watches. There's like if something is unfamiliar to you, there isn't anything that like hasn't been written about at this point.
Sure.
So like you can now pursue that thing and have all this additional context around it, which I think is like a really valuable by.
And honestly, too, you can instantly fact check almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch a review and you walk away from it doubting anything or even fully believing that review, go watch 3 more and see if they line up. Just do that and see what happens.
Yep. What are some other kind of like practical tips for like sort of like getting involved in the hobby, like from scratch? I wrote a couple things down. One thing that I think is really important is to, this might seem obvious, but like try watches on, like make sure that you understand like, you know, how they wear on your wrist. Like it's very hard to get a sense of that from a written review or a video review, and certainly from still images, and certainly from like brand images, which are often just like renders.
Horrible.
So I can't stress that enough. Like you got to try watches on. There will come a time when you get a little bit more advanced, you know, in the hobby, and it's a little bit less important. You might figure out sort of like what sizes and shapes, you know, either feel best or look best, you know, on your wrist. And you might not have to try things on to really get a sense of that. But like, it's always better to handle a watch in person if you can before actually pulling the trigger on something.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard too sometimes. Yeah. Some watches you just can't get your hands on easily. That's why wind up is as important as it is. And that's why hopefully we have all the meetups that we have and we can get all the brands together and you can come get your hands on watches. And going to your AD is obviously important too. Don't feel scared or embarrassed to ask to try watches on. That is their job, to hand you a watch to try that watch on. Mm-hmm. And if they look at you and sneer and don't want to hand you a watch, grab someone else and have them let you try that watch on. Because, you know, that person, a lot of them work on commission. Pretty woman them. Just like, tell them what a huge mistake they're making. That is my favorite thing to do.
Big mistake.
Yeah. It's so fun to do. But yeah, absolutely try them on. Honestly, too, like you say, no matter how long you've been in the industry, or well, you mentioned if you've been in for a long time, you start to understand the proportions and the geometry where you might not need to try them on. I still find myself surprised every once in a while where I see dimensions where I'm like, I know that that's going to fit incredibly well. And then I put it on and there's something about it that feels off, or vice versa. Something on paper sounds great. And then I put it on and I'm like, what the heck is going on?
I think also, well, that's totally accurate. I guess sort of what I was getting at is there might come a point where you don't care. Where like it's
that is true,
you know, where you might like take a flyer on a watch either because it's like it's, you know, affordable, you know, to you, whatever that means, or it might be like tough to get and you have to like make a decision, and it just might not matter to you all that much. Like how the watch actually wears on your wrist, like wearing it itself or owning it itself is kind of like
the Scoop Aqua.
Yeah, like that's a good example of like, you know, you can like it aesthetically or not like it aesthetically, but like assume you enjoy it, like the way it looks, you know, like on the Swatch website. That watch is what is it, like a few $100s? Like
I think it was like $140 or something like that.
Yeah, that's an example of a watch where like, you know, you maybe don't have to like make a special trip to the Swatch store,
right,
to decide, you know, whether you like the finer points of how the Scoop Aqua wears.
Ship it right to my apartment.
Yeah, you can just decide to like, you know, put that in your veins and just
just inject it straight in.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think that's something that comes, you know, with like deciding that you don't care, you know, how much wears.
Yeah,
so
you're buying it for like, different reasons.
Yeah, that's something that really comes with time and really like after a period of like, you know, developing your taste, I think, over years and many watches. And I mean, it comes with trying on watches. Like the only way to do that is to wear watches. So yeah, that's maybe another podcast. But what are some other sort of like practical tips for, you know, for someone just starting out, like getting into the hobby who's like really interested in pursuing it?
One thing, this is going to sound very obvious to a lot of people out there, but I mean, don't be afraid of size, big or small. Believe it or not, for a long time, I wear a 45 millimeter Omega Planet Ocean most days. For a long time, I refused to wear a watch over 36 millimeters because I thought it looked ridiculous. So I wore like a 35 millimeter Seiko for a very, very long time, which now that I put that watch on my wrist, it looks ridiculous. And I look back at that time and I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I thought anything bigger than that was dumb, but I did. And I think too, especially in a lot of foreign countries, huge watches are still men's watches and tiny watches are still women's watches. And that can be kind of a hard thing to break a mindset of, I guess, but it's a trap that a lot of us fall into. So just try not to. And that, I guess, kind of comes down to just try it on and buy what you like. Same thing with color. If you want color, buy color. If you don't. But also too, don't get hung up on movement specs.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I find people, especially early on when they're getting into the hobby, they are spec sheet comparison sticklers. They are looking at it and they're like, okay, for $500, I can have plus or minus 20 or plus or minus 40. I can have 40 millimeters, titanium versus stainless steel. And it's like, no. If you're buying for a spec sheet, you don't care about the watch. And at that point, you're going to move it on eventually anyway.
Yeah. I think that's a very natural sort of like progression though. Like, I think that like that's a phase that you kind of have to go through to figure out like what matters to you in terms of specs. Cause like, I think it's reasonable to say that like there are certain like kind of, you know, like table stakes, like bare minimum things
Sure.
in terms of specs that you expect from a watch. And that depends on like how you wear it and what the, you know, what your lifestyle is like, you know, like you might say like, you know, it needs to have 50 meters of water resistance or 100 meters of water resistance or whatever. And like, that might be your deal breaker.
Sure.
You know, or it could be like size related, you know, to a degree. Like I really do think though that like it's important not to get hung up on like size specs, you know, too much. But like, I feel like that's a very normal part of like starting out, you know,
it can be. Well, it's hard when value is drilled so hard into your brain when you're starting out. Mm-hmm. That is something, I mean, that's the title of most videos out there, right? Best everyday watch under $500. Best dive watch under $1,000. And that's just what gets clicks. That's what we all talk about. That's how we phrase everything because that is what people are looking for. That's what people are searching for. That's how we all have jobs. Frankly, it's unfortunate, but that is true.
What would be a better way to frame those watches, do you think?
I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to pinpoint the niche thing that's really the hot take on those watches and turn those into keyword titles because the niche hot take on those watches are not going to be very searchable. So if you put something in the title of like, okay, so we talked about the top time recently. Mm-hmm. If I put in there like the least Breitling, maybe that gets clicks, but it probably doesn't. But if I say something along the lines of Breitling's most erotic dial, bet you that gets more clicks.
Yeah. Sad commentary.
Yeah.
So many things. But yeah, no, I think that's right. And that just kind of like speaks to what we talked about before, which is the absolute kind of like exponential increase in content to sift through. So yeah, it's tough to find the stuff that you like actually want to find when the algorithm is just like throwing those, you know, listicles at you.
Well, and I've seen people walk themselves out of a watch before. And I guess this is probably what I'm getting at more than anything else is I've actually seen this in friends and other collectors too, where they have a watch in mind. They really like it. They are very interested in it. And they go, well, there's a watch that I like, but for $50 less, I can get a watch with very similar specifications. And you're like, okay, but do you like that watch just as much? Well, no. But it is like $50 or $100 less.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but you don't like it as much. Just spend the extra money to get the watch you like. And it becomes this whole like juggling act. Maybe it's not $50 or $100. Maybe it's $200 or $300. Maybe I'm giving a bad price example there. But I've seen people walk themselves out of deals just because the specs are slightly off. Or, you know, well, this one's plus or minus 20 seconds, but that one's plus or minus 10 seconds. You know, I can't deal with plus or minus an extra 20 or 10 seconds per day. And it's like, you're not going to notice that because chances are good you're going to switch to another watch. It's going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So just, if it's really important to you, great. But at the end of the day, don't let the specs walk you out of what you actually want.
Yeah. What about some actual watches and or brands that folks can consider? I mentioned, you know, I was asked by one of my neighbors that, you know, actually, you know, about, he was thinking about like, he wears a smartwatch. He was thinking like, you know, maybe I'd like a, you know, mechanical watch or like an enthusiast, you know, focus.
He's trying to case your apartment. Actually, he's going to rob you.
Don't say that. Don't even put that into the universe. And, you know, he was just sort of like, you know, just picking my brain. I think he was just, you know, maybe being.
How much money would you spend on an average watch that you have in your collection?
It's funny, you know, I'll tell you a funny story off mic about a situation. Anyway, the first thing that came to mind is a watch that I've recommended to many people across many years is the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. I feel like, you know, that is sort of like to me, that's like the gateway watch, like right now. It's
Yeah.
from a like historic brand with American roots, Swiss made, if that's important to you. It has a manually wound movement, so it immediately kind of like, you know, gets you, it familiarizes you with like, you know, how mechanical watches work at like a very basic level. Like you have to wind this thing, you know, every day. It's and you kind of have to like understand that, you know, to wear this watch. And you know, it's a field watch, just kind of a classic style, sort of like goes with everything, can be dressed up or dressed down, et cetera, et cetera. Many different dial and case options. You know, I like the traditional, I think it's like a 36 or 37 millimeter case, but they do make, you know, essentially like versions of this watch in smaller and larger sizes. So there's a lot of variety,
colors and
there.
Bronze and titanium and
I feel like to me that is like I said, that's a gateway watch. Like that's a watch that can like fuel can fuel an interest in the hobby for a huge variety of reasons.
Yeah, and honestly too, like the price is pretty fine. It's middle of the road, right around, you know, you can get them for like $350 if you can find them on sale or used. But you're going to spend somewhere around $500 for one. You can, like you said, you can get whatever flavor you want, any color, any size. You can put it on a strap if you want to dress it up, dress it down, wear it to the office, wear it out in the field. The water resistance at 50 meters leaves a little bit to be desired by some, but I don't know.
It's fine.
I don't know many people who have flooded them, so it's not a huge deal there. I do know someone who's pulled the crown off of one before, so that's something you might have to watch.
You won't make that mistake again.
That's something you might want to watch out for. And the lugs are a little bit on the longer side too, so they do wear a little bit, they're a little slabby in their construction, so they do wear a little larger than I think people might anticipate based on their case diameter. So that is one thing that's
listen, I didn't say it was a perfect watch. I just said
no. You know, I'm just here to tear down your pick here.
Yeah. Let's hear your pick. What would you?
Okay, well, you didn't tell me. You're going to put me on the spot here, because I mean, for a long time it used to be the old like Seiko SNEs or the SKX or the Seiko Turtle, but now those are creeping up in price, and at this point I don't think that they are really that gateway watch. And I think you're right. I was going to say something from Citizen like the ProMaster Dive, but I agree. I think that you should look at something mechanical or maybe automatic. I don't think that quartz is really going to engage the same amount of romance that you might get for a young collector out there. So I hate to agree with you, but you might be correct on that one.
I think I am correct. I'm a little disappointed you don't have you couldn't. There's got to be like a sub-$1,000 mechanical.
I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but like the thing is the Hamilton's vanilla ice cream. You know what I mean? Like no one's going to be offended by it. If you want to get something a little bit spicier, you can go with something like what Baltic. Baltic has a couple great watches in the same price point that are going to get you mechanical options, and they're going to be a little spicier.
Yeah, I think Baltic's a good option. So like my sort of like micro brand pick is Laurier for this.
Sure.
Like there's a lot of, you know, pick your favorite, you know, small brand, like, you know, Baltic, Laurier, there's a bunch that kind of offer similar sort of like often vintage inspired sports watch kind of aesthetic, you know, mechanical automatic movements, reliable, you know, like we know, like these are brands that are kind of like known entities, you know, in the enthusiast community, which I think is important, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that like honestly, like if you look at like the roster of brands from like any recent windup, I think you'll find a variety of brands making like really interesting watches that are like under $1,000, which I think is like, you know, everyone's different. Obviously, I wouldn't necessarily recommend spending more than that on like a first watch if you're interested in like pursuing this as a hobby. It's totally, you know, totally conceivable to like, you know, get into this for like, you know, $500-$600 or even less.
You know what's a big stinker on this point? Another watch that I used to recommend a lot was the Sternglass Naus.
Mm-hmm.
But Sternglass is pulling out of the U.S. market at the end of August.
Really?
So there's a bombshell for all you people out there. You can get a discount on them now until the end of August, but at the end of August they will no longer be for sale in the United States. So that's one option off the table, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, another option, like I said, like come to a windup. You know,
look around and find. There's going to be a ton of micro brands there.
Yeah, and Citizens there, and Christopher Ward is there, and so there's a community there, and that goes back to the other point that we made about like finding your people, in this hobby is, I think equally as important as finding like the right watch to wear. So
yeah, don't do an Orient Bambino. I'm just warning you right off the bat here. That's another one that everyone's going to recommend to a lot of people out there as like an automatic attainable option. But the finishing is not as good as people pretend it is, and you'll be over it very quickly. It's nice, but it is very generic. And at the price point, you can almost get like a Laco Aachen for the same price.
Mm-hmm.
Get the Laco instead.
I like the Orient. I'm a fan. I like the Bambino.
Okay, all right. Well,
any final words on how to start a collection in 2025? I feel like this is hopefully this is a valuable conversation to someone. I think we covered.
I hope so. Well, I mean, the hard thing is most likely if you're looking to start a collection, you're probably not listening to this podcast, but maybe someone listening to this podcast has someone coming to them saying, hey, how do I start a collection? And we're giving you valuable information that you can pass on. My best advice is to tell everyone to just wait longer than they want to. Because I think we all, we have money that burns a hole in our pocket. We buy something, we regret it. And then you end up on this chase where you're flipping and trying to buy, and you buy something. Basically anything that you buy under $1,000, you are going to resell for half of whatever you bought it for because nobody actually wants it. And reselling watches sucks. So just wait longer than you want to buy the watch that you actually want.
Not bad advice, but also not something I've ever done.
Same.
Just buy the watch. Just bite the bullet and,
Yeah.
Listen, you can't take it with you.
Learn from my mistakes.
So, yeah. Do as I say, not as I do. Thanks, Devin. This has been a fun conversation. Before we go, we do have cultural recommendations. We're bringing that back.
Yeah.
Because I think, culture is important to us.
It is.
Yeah. So did you have a cultural recommendation?
I do. Mine is both bratty and cultural. So this is pretty fun.
Excellent.
So currently my brother is in Paris. He and my sister-in-law are over there for a work trip. And he FaceTimes me from in front of the Eiffel Tower drinking a beer. And he says to me, he's like, Devin, look at this. I'm in front of a famous monument just in the middle of a city. Where else can you do that? And I said, no, I live in New York City. We have monuments everywhere. And he goes, yeah, but I'm drinking a beer in public. You can't do that there. And I go, buddy, I drink in public all the time in New York City, just not legally.
There you go.
And he goes, yeah, but I took the subway here. We can take the subway anywhere. And I go, no, we can do the same thing here too. And he goes, all right. But what you don't have is a large statue called Cleopatra's obelisk. We have this big spire here in France. They have it from Cleopatra. She had it in Egypt. The English stole it. They traded it to France for a clock. What a lot of people don't know is that we actually do have one of those in Central Park because the British stole two of them from Cleopatra, traded one to the French, traded the other one to New York City. We put it in Central Park, and you can actually go touch it in Central Park if you want to. So I just destroyed his entire day. But the only reason I know that is because Architectural Digest does these really fun walking tours of New York City. Luckily, I live in like the most well-documented historic city in the world where they just will tell you the history of every street corner and anything that's ever happened there. But Architectural Digest has a bunch of these videos out there. But in particular, this one is How Central Park Holds the Answers to Big New York City Secrets Walking Tour, Architectural Digest. And that is where I learned about that spire. So I will give you the link, Zach, so you can put it in the show notes. But I recommend for everybody to just learn a little bit about the history of their own town so you can burst your own brother's bubble.
Wow. Can we burst your brother's bubble in other ways? Is there...
Oh, it's one of my favorite things to do. I mean, He was so defeated at the end of that phone call that he just stopped.
Yeah. No. Well, you sound like you really... like honestly, you sound awful.
Yeah. I hope I ruined France for him. Now, to be fair, it's much cleaner where he was sitting on grass than I could ever do here. But you know what? It was nice to just kind of give him one.
One of my favorite things to do is, well, not one of my favorite things, that's overstating it, but I think a funny thing to do that I've done is when someone posts, when someone's traveling in Paris and they post like the selfie or the photo of them like in front of the Eiffel Tower on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I like to just comment, oh, I love Vegas. Have a good time. Go to the Sphere. It's fun. I enjoy doing that. I think that's very funny.
That is hilarious.
You apparently thought it was funny. People who I make that a comment to tend to not find it funny.
Well, they need to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah. That's a good cultural recommendation. I love I love learning about. I mean, history is great. Architectural Digest is a great website, great publication. I think this is the second or third time they've made an appearance in our cultural recommendations section. So yeah, great rec. My rec. So I feel like my recommendation is always just like the most recent movie I saw. But that's, I mean, listen. Sorry, I'm recommending good movies, but I saw Weapons over the weekend. The new Zach Kreger movie, his follow up to Barbarian, just really great. Really loved it. If you can see it in like a big theater with a packed crowd, I mean, you don't have any control over that, but I saw it over the weekend in a very packed theater, and I just think there's no better movie experience, in my opinion, than seeing like a really fun horror movie in a very crowded theater full of like people who really want to be there, because like
that sounds horrible.
Oh man, it's so much fun. It's like and the movie has, I won't give anything away, like no spoilers of course, but it goes very hard. Like it has like an ending where people are like, oh my
gosh, you used the saying, holy cow, it goes hard.
Am I not?
I know, I love that. No, I said that a couple weeks ago, and you said you would never use that sentence.
I don't think I said that. Doesn't sound like something I'd say. But I mean, it has a sequence where like people will be like hooting and hollering and like cheering, like,
oh man,
like it's so much fun. So yeah, Weapons, really great.
Very cool.
I mean, it was a great theater experience. Like maybe 6 months from now, I won't be thinking about it too much, but like in the moment, fantastic. And like Zach Kreger is a real kind of like, he's a real filmmaker. He's very talented. Like the 2 movies in a row that kind of had like a similar sort of, visceral impact in the theater. So yeah,
wow.
Weapons.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, go see it.
Interesting. All right, yeah. I will. Well, I finally saw 28 Years Later.
What'd you think of that?
I liked it a lot. Actually, I had a lot of fun. It's kind of ridiculous and crazy, and there's just like a lot of things flopping at you all the time. So it's very, very interesting.
We'll talk offline. We'll talk about the ending of that movie. It's
for sure. Yeah. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Devin, thanks again. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in once again to the Warner Wild podcast. Stay tuned for another all new episode next week. Until then, take care.